So just a quick checkup on the potted plants post rainstorm. We got a really heavy storm this weekend, and got some nice rain out of it. A good bit of rain out of it, but also a lot of high winds and that kind of stuff. So did a lot of damage to trees, knocked over the potatoes a little bit there, but no big deal. No major losses. Just thought I would do a quick checkup on the figs here. Lots of new leaf growth perking on these. They're going to be ready to go in the ground pretty soon here. That's exciting. The turmeric that I put in the planter here last week is taking off. All little shoots coming up. And the peppers are growing here in the planter pot. Things are looking good. New growth coming on this rosemary, ongoing. Cooked a couple of nice steaks over the weekend with some of that and some of the thyme. And we'll just take a look here quick at the lemon verbena, which is very happy in the sun. And we're propagating down below here. And then of course the lemon tree is doing well also. So we had a wicked storm this weekend, and it brought down a tremendous amount of trees. Power has been out for about 24 hours. I just got power back at my place. Fortunate to have UPS and gensets and backup, but wow, the destructive force that this storm brought with it was incredible. It just absolutely destroyed these trees. And what a mess, man. I'm sorry it's such a mess. What do you think, Titus? Is that a mess, buddy? Is that a mess? Yeah, I'm with you. I'm on backup power on the generator. UPS kept my editing projects up. Server kept rolling. I brought power back up and didn't lose a glitch on a project. We're still out of power. We're going for 24 hours here almost. But it's all good.
But I never touch down, fuck around and spread wings.
So here we are, post heavy storm, heavy rains. I haven't checked to see what the total rainfall was for this storm, but I'm sure it was a significant amount. Our soil is nice and moist and soft everywhere, so that's nice. We'll just take a look at our calcium sulfate amendment here. You can see that some of it did not dissolve down in yet, and that's okay. But I assure you that some did, and as the rains come and as we work the soils and mulches, that will work its way in over time and become available to the plants more and more. Alright, so here we are up at the ginger tomato block, ginger turmeric tomato block. So we get a quick look at these plants. Explosive growth and much healthier plants in the last week or so since they were set out, had foliar feeds and had a chance to start getting established and had some good rains. They're coming along nice. Our holy basil is branching out like crazy all over the place. And my nephew Josh and my son and their friend Dana were up here yesterday, and they got to try the holy basil. It's something they'd never tried before, so they thought that was interesting because it's quite a combination of flavors. my son Jeremy and I both agree holy basil is one of the best flavors you can add to any pasta dish, hands down. Just ramps it up a whole nother level. Well worth it. I guess we'll just check out the ones here on the other side. These are cherry tomato from Johnny's Selected Seeds, I believe. They're taking off good too. And as my friend Joe's wife said to me, and it's something I have to get on yesterday, what are you going to do for tomato steaks for all those tomatoes? And I said, yeah, I haven't gotten to that yet. We have a ton of cedar trees here that we've taken down and a ton more to take down. So I think I'm going to try and use some of those. But we'll see how that goes. It's always a project to turn trees into posts, even when you have efficient equipment. So one thing I want to talk about today in this video is resilience. And this recent storm that we had this weekend was a great reminder for me. In previous years, when I lived on the farm in Mountain View Road, I was always prepared for storms. I sort of lived half camping on that land. The way the house is set up, the way power was there, just the situation there basically left me at sort of like a little above camping as far as a living situation. And so that's always a great place to be, actually, because it keeps you very close to the land and very aware of what your resources are and aware of how short that supply chain actually can be, and that you'll have to switch to alternates if that happens. And then I moved to Canada, and I lived in a luxury townhouse for a while with my wife. And I've lived in a nice place since I moved back here to the US. And that's been great. It's really nice having the comforts of home and heating and cooling and power and just all those comforts that I didn't have on the farm. But this recent storm reminded me of just how susceptible we are to those issues. And so one of the things that when I do design work for a farm or anything I build or plan or do, I always try to incorporate the concept of, hey, what if the supply chain or the power chain fails? What are the alternates? And can we design this so that we can switch to an alternate easily? And so when I built the new server workstation setup, I designed that with that concept in mind, so that even if power went down, I wouldn't lose a project. I would have time to save a project or save an AutoCAD drawing or save my work and shut down. So I put UPS systems on, and I went over the top with those UPS systems. I was actually able to continue editing for about a half an hour after power went out before I finally said, okay, I'm going to shut this down and go have a fire and just enjoy peace and quiet. But I did bring a generator back up, and I was able to power that station back up and do more work. And that was nice to have a system that was set up so that I could take a smooth power down, not lose project work, and then at my leisure, when I need power, bring the generator up and bring that whole system back up and do what I got to do, while running the grow labs, while charging batteries, while keeping the fridge cold. You know, I was able to bring all that stuff back up. But that's only because I'm prepared way in advance. And that's my whole point about this. And it's about engineering and designing systems that include those concepts way in advance. And that doesn't just apply to internet infrastructure or computer infrastructure or power infrastructure. That also applies to farm infrastructure. If you set a farm up right, you can make it so that even if you have a drought season and a tough year, and you hit all kinds of obstacles, you can still come out with some degree of success. That when you design a farm, and when you think about your farming systems and how you're going to lay them out, that you think about things that you would not normally consider in a normal situation. For example, if your farm is normally rigged to grid power, and you always have grid power for irrigation and feeding animals and all the processes that go on a farm, and that grid power goes down, you now don't have it. What are you going to do when that happens? Maybe you can sustain like that for a day, but what happens if the grid gets hit and you don't have any power for days, weeks, months, years possibly? These are things that we need to consider. And it's a big part of why we aim at regenerative farming, because regenerative farming is capable of sustaining itself within the system once it's booted up and running. So we'll talk more about this in the future, But I just wanted to introduce the concept and cover some of the details and get people thinking about it because it's really important. And it's not really important just on an individual level, it's really important on a community level as well, so that communities can sustain each other and protect each other and defend each other through difficult times, no matter what those difficult times come from. Whether it's an attack from an external threat, or whether it's a natural disaster, or whatever the issue is, you want to be ready to take it as it comes, handle it, and not be destroyed by it. And that means preparing in advance. Well, you know I just can't resist those black caps. Gotta have some while I'm here. It's a short season. A short. I believe those are oysters, but I thought I would get a look at these tomatoes here out in the potato field as well. They went in like, what, a week or two later than the others. So they're not quite as well established. But they are taking off.
I'll just be gorging over here.
So I talk about photosynthesis being the primary driver in the entire ecosystem all the time. And I've tried to stress to so many friends and family and other growers that I know about the more sunlight you can get on most of the crops that we're growing. Most of them like sunlight all day. So the more sunlight you can get on them, the more photosynthetic action you can have. That's the more energy you can generate. That's the more plant you can grow. That's the more yield you can have. That's the more health you can have. That's the more humic matter and energy you can put into the soil. The more. Down the list. The whole thing runs off of photosynthesis. So this here is a fantastic example of, even though here we are out of this big open field, we have mostly open skies. You know, to the east here it's straight open. But here in the afternoon, it's a little after 4, maybe 4:30, closing on 5. And the sun is hitting that tree line already. And we're losing sunlight on these plants already. Now, I'm not going to go and cut those trees partially because they're on the property line and partially because they're beautiful maple trees. Even if they were inside the line, I would not take a tree like that down. Too much resource as a tree to take down. But it's a point to be aware of. And we'll keep an eye on this crop throughout the season. We might actually see a difference between here on this side where we have the taller trees and this side where we have less tall trees to the west. We might actually see a yield difference or a plant size difference here. So we'll just keep an eye on it. I just thought I would point it out while I was noticing. So I did not release the former part of the video on this, but I started to put a head gasket in this. I had it all apart. I had it all cleaned up. I had a brand new head gasket in it. I had it all back together, and it leaked when I got it back together. So I got some advice from a few different friends who are very well mechanically inclined, and they all gave me some excellent advice. So on their advice, I've got a new head gasket on the way, and I've got some other tools and parts. And when I get those here and get through this and get it straightened out and running again, I'll give you a full video on the whole head gasket deal. But until then, I really don't have any conclusive answers yet. So I didn't want to put a video out that didn't help somebody finish putting a head gasket on a tractor. So to that end, that video will close when I've closed getting this running again. But for now, we are down with the head gasket. I'm sure I've mentioned it in other videos, but I didn't make a whole video on it. So I thought I would just incorporate it just for timeline so you can know where we're at. When that gets back online, I'm going to get really back to work. Yeah. So back here, I did some post-cutting work. Really trying to reconsider tomato steaks and how to steak this many tomatoes without spending a tremendous amount of money or time and energy. So I'm going to go back and rethink that. But along the lines of the deer and rabbit issue, I'm going to put down a little bit of organic blood meal here just to try and help deter them. Used this before on other gardens that are, just under attack by deer all the time. seems to work well. You do have to reapply between rains, but it does provide a little bit of nitrogen, so nice little addition. Also provides a little bit of iron, among others, I'm sure. So I just thought I would detail it. So I put a very, very, very light dusting of that down just to basically get the smell down to deter the animals. Not so worried about the supplement. Don't really need nitrogen here. There's one tomato here chewed on by somebody, but I was noticing that the turmeric is all popping up now all over the place. So that's encouraging and good timing with the blood meal. Looks like the rains and that calcium sulfate really give it a nice bump. There's just a couple of spots where machine got pulled off of the row a little bit, and a few got separated out of the row. So I'm just going back and putting them back in place. As the chefs say, mise en place. Things in place. Nothing really to it, by the way. Make a hole, stick it in. Yeah, it's a little high. It'll be fine. If we get that forward running again, I'll probably come back through and do another hilling round. But we'll see. The plants are going to be pretty big by the time that happens. And I don't want to do damage. If you remember, not too far back in the series here, I talked about elevation and AutoCAD and planning, and talked a little bit about low-lying areas and how they can accumulate water and how the bed former will help us with that. Well, here's a great example with the heavy rain that we had. We obviously did get heavy rain because you can see where the water actually pooled in here and sat for a little bit before it drained out. And that's that low area. And as you come up here, you don't see that. So again, this is why I talk about all this sort of stuff, planning and implementing in a way that works in and on the terrain that you're working with. Also, I'll just point out that since we've had a few rains now, the amount of shale and rock that's up on this end becomes quite evident, especially where this rock ridge is so close to us here. I just thought I would point it out so you can see it and see the soil transition away from the rock out to the more clay stuff. So you can see soils can vary dramatically in very small areas, and sometimes you'll have to treat this soil different than that soil. We'll see, but we already do have evidence that this soil performs differently than that soil based on the growth that we're seeing here and in combination with the soil transition. The potatoes seem to be doing okay, but not quite as robust as where that soil transitions over and there's more of the clay in it. And isn't that interesting? People talk about the clay soils being so hard to grow in. I favor a clay soil. All those clay colloids have all the nutrients if I can unlock them. Oh, and I can. So let's just take another look at that soil change again. Because even just closer to the roadway here, the soil is much more clay-like and much nicer. As you go further away, you can see there's like a vein of rock. Actually kind of comes out here and then cuts back in that way. Just that I would show it while I was observing it. We'll get the drones back out here and get some nice footage of the drones. We'll just show a couple of different stages of emergence, since there are a few in different stages here. So you can get an idea of how they grow up out of the ground and develop into a plant. sun. Nice breeze blowing. And eventually become a bigger plant. And you'll see them get much bigger than this. Much bigger. And here's just a nice shot down the row. The nice breeze. Because it is just a beautiful evening. Alright, I think that's it for now. Hope you found this interesting or informative. Thanks for watching. The Pharmacy Season.
Well, there you go.